Why did no one look at her when the briefing began? The room was full, maps pinned to the walls, radios humming faint static in the background. The air smelled of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Every man in that circle leaned forward on the folding chairs, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on the colonel as he spoke. Every man except her. She sat just as close, just as steady, but somehow invisible. She didn't shift in her chair, didn't clear her throat. She knew better. Silence was her armor. She had learned painfully that sometimes speaking too soon was worse than not being heard at all. But she noticed things. The slight tremor in the colonel's hand as he traced the red line across the map. The shallow breaths of the medic 2 seats away. The way the interpreter's eyes lingered on the door, as if he wanted to run before the mission was even explained. They doubted her fire. She felt it. Saw it in the way no one passed her the pen when notes were taken. Saw it in the way 2 sergeants leaned closer to each other, whispering, right when she spoke up. And she swallowed it down as she always did. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The colonel's voice cut the room into fragments. Target is here. Compound, 3 buildings, possible weapons cache, possible high-value individual. His hand landed flat on the paper. We go at dawn. A murmur swept the men. Some nodded, some frowned. She said nothing. Her pulse thudded slower than theirs. She trained herself to listen differently, not just to the words but to the silence between them. And what she heard now was fear, even under bravado, even under the smirk of the squad leader who cracked a joke about breakfast rations. She knew that fear. It had been hers once. Outside, night pressed hard against the tin walls of the outpost. The desert wind carried sand that hissed faintly against the siding. Somewhere in the darkness, a generator coughed itself awake, throwing a dull vibration through the floor. She stood when the meeting ended. No one waited for her. No one asked her thoughts. Boots shuffled past. A few nodded out of habit, not respect. She slipped her notebook into her pocket. She had written nothing. She didn't need to. Every detail was etched sharp inside her mind. Her bunk creaked when she sat down. The canvas smelled of dust, sweat, and a faint trace of detergent that never really masked the war in it. She unlaced her boots slowly, deliberately, as if each knot undone gave her another second to breathe. But her chest was heavy, not from the mission, from memory. Because once, long before this outpost, she had been ignored in a smaller room in a smaller life. A father who never looked up from his newspaper. A coach who laughed when she asked to try out. A recruiter who almost closed the folder when she walked in. "Are you sure this is the path you want?" he'd said, as if the uniform didn't belong to her skin the way it did to his. She had carried that doubt like shrapnel lodged deep, never fatal, always aching. A voice jolted her back. "You ready?" It was Ruiz, the youngest of the unit, barely 22, always carrying too much eagerness in his steps. He leaned in the doorway now, helmet tucked under one arm. His eyes darted quickly, like he was checking if anyone else was listening. "Doesn't matter if I'm ready," she said. Her tone was flat, but her gaze was steady. "What matters is if you are." He smirked, but it didn't hold. His jaw tightened. "I don't like the looks of this one." Neither did she, but she didn't say it. Instead, she asked, "What's on your mind?" "My brother, he's back home, said he had a dream, said I wouldn't." Ruiz stopped, rubbed the back of his neck. "Forget it, stupid." "Dreams aren't stupid," she said softly, and for the first time in hours her voice carried warmth. "They're just reminders." "Of what?" She didn't answer, not because she couldn't, but because the reminder pounding in her own heart was too sharp. When Ruiz left, silence settled again. She laid back on the bunk, staring at the thin metal slats above her. She counted her breaths, slow, even. She tried not to remember, but memory has its own orders and it obeys no command. It came in fragments. Her brother, too, but not alive, not like Ruiz's. He had worn the same uniform, same flag on his shoulder. But he hadn't come home. She had watched the casket lowered, felt the tremor in the earth as the rifles fired in salute, watched her mother fold in on herself like paper burned to ash. That was why she was here. Not for the colonel, not for the whispers of doubting men, but for him, for the silence he left behind. The generator outside sputtered again. She closed her eyes, forced herself into shallow sleep, knowing it would be broken before dawn. And it was. Boots thundered on gravel, radios crackled alive. The air before sunrise was colder, sharper, carrying the metallic taste of nerves. She geared up with quiet precision, vest tightened, rifle checked, helmet snug, each motion ritual, each ritual a shield. In the convoy she sat pressed against the window. The desert stretched endless, a shadowed sea of sand and rock under the pale glow of a coming day. Engines rumbled low. No one spoke much, just the occasional cough, the clink of gear, the rattle of armored doors. Her eyes scanned the horizon, always moving, always questioning. She didn't just look for threats, she looked for patterns, the rhythm of villagers' steps, the way a goat herd shifted too quickly, the way a curtain trembled in a window when the wind had stilled. That was her fire, not loud, not boastful, but alive. She felt the doubt in the men around her, though no one said it. Felt it in the way they avoided her eyes. Felt it in the way their shoulders angled slightly toward one another, away from her. But she would prove it not with words, with survival, with presence, with every choice that meant one of them might go home alive. The convoy slowed. Dust rose in pale clouds. The compound stood ahead, a cluster of squat, sand-colored buildings wrapped in silence. Too much silence. She felt it first, that crawling shift in the air, that pause where even the birds seemed to vanish. Her hand tightened on her rifle, her breath stilled. "Something off," she murmured. No one answered, they never did. But she was right. A crack split the morning, sharp, violent. The windshield of the lead vehicle shattered and the convoy exploded into chaos. Shouts, smoke, the heavy bark of rifles. She moved without hesitation. Fire cut through the air, dust burned her lungs, but her eyes stayed locked, searching, scanning, calculating. And even as bullets screamed past, she felt it again, the weight of their doubt. The unspoken question in every glance, every hesitation. Could she hold? Could she stand unshaken? Her body answered before her mind could. She did not flinch. She did not fold. And in that chaos she realized this was only the beginning. Because there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. How do you tell the difference between panic and instinct? The convoy was pinned. Smoke curled from the front vehicle, black against the pale morning sky. Bullets chipped at stone walls, snapping echoes across the valley. Shouts tore through the radios, overlapping, frantic. And in the middle of it all, she crouched low behind the armored door, her cheek pressed against cold metal, her breathing too steady for the storm around her. "Contact front," someone roared. She didn't need the call, she had already seen it. Movement in the second-story window of the compound. A muzzle flash, faint but clear against the dull sand. Her scope rose. Her pulse did not. The first round left her barrel sharp, decisive. The flash vanished. A shadow folded backward. Silence in that window. But silence here was never victory. Silence meant reload. Silence meant shift. Silence meant the next storm was seconds away. "Move up, move up." The squad leader's voice cracked under the weight of command. Boots scrambled in gravel. Gear clattered. She slipped from cover, rifle tucked tight, eyes sweeping every edge of the buildings ahead. The air tasted of iron and grit. Every sound magnified, each breath, each crunch of rock beneath boots, each shot that slammed too close. Ruiz darted past her, too fast, too eager. He hugged the corner of the building and peeked. Too much of his helmet showed. She yanked him back just as a burst shredded the wall inches from where his head had been. "Slow down," she hissed. His eyes widened. He nodded, but fear was louder than discipline. They pressed in closer. Walls loomed. The compound smelled of stale cooking smoke and something sharper, gun oil maybe. A door sagged open, darkness behind it. Every instinct in her body screamed trap. "Clear it," the squad leader ordered. His eyes cut past her toward two men beside her. She moved anyway, rifle raised, finger steady, step silent. She slipped inside, swallowed by shadow. The air was cooler here, thick. Her boots pressed into scattered sand. She swept left, then right. Empty cots, cracked bowls, a prayer rug folded against the wall, dust caught in thin beams of light where bullets had punched through. And then a sound, not loud, not sharp, just the faintest scrape of movement in the back room. She froze. Her heart beat once heavy, twice. Her eyes met Ruiz's in the dim light behind her. He was waiting, breathing fast. She moved first. Door swung wide, her barrel cutting the darkness. A boy, no older than 15. Thin, trembling hands lifted. His chest heaved, sweat streaking his dirt-covered skin, and in his eyes fear that mirrored Ruiz's. Her finger didn't move. The boy's lips parted, soundless. His hand twitched toward the corner, toward something half-hidden under a tattered blanket. "Don't," she whispered, not to him, to herself, to the ghosts pressing around her. Because she had seen this before, too many times, and every time the choice cut her in two. "Ma'am," Ruiz's whisper trembled, "what do we?" The boy's hand shifted faster. She fired. The room cracked open with thunder. Ruiz flinched, his breath caught. The boy fell back, his arm outstretched toward the blanket. A glint of metal spilled free. A rifle, not small, not harmless. Silence pressed in. He had been seconds away. Ruiz's eyes locked on her. Wide, unblinking. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say anything. But something in his gaze changed. She lowered her rifle. Her shoulders didn't. Because the shot echoed inside her louder than outside. Every child she had ever seen in these places lived inside her memory. Some innocent, some not. And in that blur, her conscience had built its own battlefield. But she didn't have time to mourn, not yet. "Compound not clear," she called, voice sharp now. The squad leader's reply came quick, clipped. "Hold position." Gunfire rattled outside again. Another explosion. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. She closed the boy's eyes with her glove, quick, silent, then turned away, because war never gave her the grace to pause. Ruiz followed her out. His steps were slower. He wouldn't forget that room. Neither would she. The courtyard burned with chaos. Smoke mixed with sunbeams now that the sky had opened wide with morning light. Shadows darted across rooftops. Every corner hid the possibility of death. She pressed herself against the wall, side up, searching, and then there, movement on the roof, faint. A figure crouched, lifting something heavy to the edge. Her breath stilled. An RPG. "Top left," she shouted, firing before the words even left her mouth. The man dropped. The launcher clattered down the roof, struck stone, spun harmless into the dust. Gasps erupted around her. Not doubt this time, something else. Recognition. But she didn't look for approval. She didn't care. Because inside, a storm raged louder than the firefight. The boy's face, the stillness of his body, the echo of her shot. The mission pressed forward. They moved deeper, room by room, wall by wall. Each step demanded more. Sweat stung her eyes. Her muscles burned. Time stretched strange, bending between seconds of still silence and bursts of unbearable violence. And all the while she carried that weight, not the rifle, not the vest, the choice. She found herself behind Ruiz again, watching his steps, guiding him without words. He hesitated at every corner now, not reckless anymore, shaken, human. And she wondered, had she just saved him or broken him? Outside, a call went up. "Compound clear." The words rang hollow. Nothing in war was ever truly clear, only less dangerous. The squad regrouped in the courtyard. Dust clung to every crease of their uniforms. Sweat darkened collars. No one spoke at first, just heavy breaths. The colonel's voice crackled over the radio demanding updates. The squad leader answered with clipped efficiency. Casualties reported, ammunition counts, grid coordinates, cold, factual. No one mentioned the boy. She stood apart, silent again, not invisible but untouchable. Ruiz sat on a broken step, helmet in his hands, staring at the ground. His lips moved soundlessly. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, maybe both. She wanted to tell him it would get easier. That time dulled the edges, but it would be a lie. The edges never dulled, they just cut deeper in silence. Instead, she crouched beside him, not too close, just enough. "You did well," she said quietly. His jaw clenched, his eyes flicked up to hers, searching, questioning. "Did I?" His voice cracked. She didn't answer, she couldn't. Because she asked herself the same thing every day. The sun rose higher, burning the sky into harsh light. The compound smelled of gunpowder and loss. The mission was done on paper, but inside it had only begun. Because they doubted her fire, and today she had shown it, but not the way they expected, not with triumph, with survival, with choices that carved scars deeper than any bullet. And somewhere inside, a memory whispered again, her brother's smile, the way he had ruffled her hair when they were kids, the way he had told her once, "You don't have to prove anything." But she had, and she still did. As the squad packed gear and prepared to roll out, the colonel's last order crackled through the static. "Good work, hold for extraction. And be ready, intel says there's more to this place than what you've seen." She felt it then, that same shift in the air she had felt before the ambush, that crawling silence, that unseen weight pressing against her chest. Because the colonel was right. There was more to this place. Much more. And she wasn't sure they were ready for it. Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire? The courtyard stood still now, but not clean, not safe. The dust was thick, hanging low, refusing to settle. The smell of smoke and cordite clung to every surface. Men shifted their weight, restless, waiting for orders that hadn't come. Radios hissed with static, occasional bursts of clipped voices. But her eyes stayed on the windows, the cracks in the walls, the shadows that seemed too deep. She felt it again, that invisible weight pressing at the edges of the compound. She knew war had many tricks. Some were loud, some quiet, but the most dangerous ones always wore silence like a mask. "Extraction ETA 30 minutes, the squad leader announced, lowering the radio. His tone was sharp, trying to sound firm, but the quiver in his hand betrayed him. 30 minutes too long. She scanned the faces around her. Ruiz sat slouched, helmet back on, eyes empty. His rifle rested across his knees, but his grip was loose. Another man, Garvey, leaned against the wall, muttering something under his breath, maybe to God, maybe to no one. The medic was repacking his kit with trembling hands, as if neat rows of bandages could bring order to chaos. She turned her gaze to the doorway of a smaller building at the far edge of the compound. A single wooden door, closed. No one had checked it yet. No one wanted to. But her instincts pressed harder. Without a word, she rose. "Where are you going?" Garvey asked, his voice edged with fatigue, maybe fear. "Finishing the job." He scoffed but didn't follow. She crossed the courtyard slowly, rifle raised, boots crunching softly on grit. Each step stretched time thinner until even her heartbeat felt too loud. The door loomed closer. The handle was rusted, the wood splintered. A faint draft leaked through the cracks, carrying a smell that was out of place, something sweet, something rotten. She pushed. The hinges groaned, long and tired. The room inside was dark, cooler than the sunlit courtyard. Her eyes adjusted slow, shapes forming in shadow. And then she froze. Cages, 3 of them, against the far wall, each no bigger than a coffin, stood upright, each holding a body. Not insurgents, civilians. A woman, her face bruised, eyes wide, clutching a child against her chest. Another boy older, gaunt, his hands tied but his gaze sharp. They stared back at her, not with gratitude, not with fear, but with something worse, something hollow. She lowered her rifle, pulse hammering. The child whimpered. The woman's cracked lips whispered a word she didn't understand. Her throat tightened. She reached for her radio. "We've got civilians, 3, alive." Static answered first, then the squad leader's voice, brittle. "Say again." "Alive prisoners, we can't leave them." A pause too long, then, "We don't have orders for that." Her jaw clenched. Orders, always orders. She turned her gaze back to the cages. The boy's eyes hadn't left hers. He was daring her, demanding. "They'll die if we stay here," she said into the radio. Another pause, then hold position, extraction's priority. Her fist tightened around the handset. She wanted to throw it, to scream, but she didn't, she never did. Instead, she knelt, cut the rope binding the boy's hands. His wrists were raw, bleeding. He didn't flinch, didn't thank her. He just grabbed the bars of the next cage and tried to force it open. The woman's sob broke then, sharp, guttural. It cut through her like shrapnel. "Ma'am," Ruiz's voice. He stood in the doorway, pale, staring at the scene. "Help me," she said. He hesitated, then he moved. Together they pried the cages open, one by one. Metal shrieked, wood splintered. The child clung tighter to his mother, burying his face in her torn scarf. When the last lock gave, silence hung heavier than before. She didn't look back at Ruiz. She didn't need to. She knew what he was thinking. This wasn't in the briefing. This wasn't in the plan. But war never followed plans. They led the civilians out into the courtyard. Heads turned. The squad stiffened. Questions rose. "What the hell is this?" Garvey snapped, eyes darting between the woman and the squad leader. "Prisoners," she said. "They stay with us." The squad leader's jaw worked. He looked at the civilians, at her, at the sky, as if hopping command would drop an answer with the extraction bird. Then he muttered, "Damn it," and turned away. The woman coughed, dry and ragged. Her boy stood in front of her, fists clenched, protective, glaring at soldiers twice his size. The little one peeked out, eyes wide with something between terror and wonder. And for the first time since the firefight began, she felt her chest ache in a different way. Not from fear, from memory. Her brother again, younger once, protective the same way, always standing in front of her even when she didn't need him to, always saying, "Stay behind me," always trying to shield her from a world that didn't believe she belonged. Now he was gone, and this boy, thin as bone, was standing the same way. Her throat tightened, she blinked it away. The radio crackled again. "Bird inbound, 2 minutes." Engines rumbled faint in the distance, a vibration low in the ground. Relief rippled through the squad like water through cracks, shoulders lowered, breaths eased. But not hers. Because the silence in the walls still pressed, the mission wasn't finished. She could feel it in her bones. Then movement, a flash at the ridge beyond the compound, the faint outline of figures, too many. Her eyes locked, her hand rose. "Contact ridge line." The squad tensed, rifles swung up. The first shot cracked across the courtyard. Chaos again. The woman screamed, clutching her children. Ruiz dragged them down behind the wall. Garvey cursed, firing wild into the distance. She pressed herself against the stone, sighting steady, breath-sharp. Figures darted across the ridge. Shadows multiplied. Muzzle flashes strobed against the sky. The bird was close now, rotor thumping louder, chopping the air. Dust spiraled in circles, lifting grit into their eyes. "Hold them off," the squad leader bellowed. She fired, precise, controlled, every shot an anchor against the storm. But in her gut she knew the ridge wasn't just an attack. It was a distraction. Something else waited in these walls. Her finger tightened on the trigger again. Her breath steadied. Her eyes narrowed. Because she understood now, the enemy wasn't just outside. It was here somewhere, and they hadn't found it yet. What if the real danger wasn't outside the walls, but within them? Gunfire rattled off the ridge, sharp and unrelenting. The squad hunkered low behind broken stone, returning fire in bursts. Dust kicked high, stinging eyes, choking throats. The woman clutched her children tighter, her thin arms trembling but unbroken. Ruiz crouched beside them, firing short, panicked bursts toward the ridge line. She pressed her shoulder to the wall, sight steady, breath even. Her shots were measured, cutting through the chaos, each one buying seconds more. But even as she fired, her eyes swept the courtyard, the shadows, the doorways. Because something gnawed at her. This wasn't how insurgents fought. They didn't stay at a distance when numbers were on their side. They swarmed, they overwhelmed, they bled recklessly, but these shadows, they were patient, pinning them, holding them, waiting. For what? The rotor wash grew louder. The extraction bird rose above the horizon, its black frame cutting through the haze. Relief washed across the squad, heads lifted, shoulders eased. Too soon. Her gut clenched, she swung her scope back to the ridge, and there it was, a flicker, a man with a radio half hidden in brush, not firing, not moving, just signaling. Her breath froze. "Wait," she shouted, voice breaking against the roar of rotors. But the squad was already rising, waving the bird in. Dust whipped across the courtyard, stinging their faces. The bird's door gunners opened up, spraying fire toward the ridge. Shadows scattered. And then it happened. The ground bucked. A flash ripped the air apart. The bird lurched sideways, fire blooming from its side. Metal screamed as it spun, blades clipping stone. A deafening crash shook the compound, dust exploding into the sky. The squad froze. Silence followed for half a heartbeat. Then chaos roared back. "Down, down," the squad leader screamed. She ducked as debris rained down. The bird was a wreck, smoke and flame curling from its twisted frame. No extraction, no escape, not now. Her chest tightened, not with panic but with the cold certainty she had felt all morning. The silence wasn't random. The ambush wasn't reckless. This was designed. They weren't meant to leave this place alive. She glanced back at the civilians. The boy stared at the wreck, fists clenched. The woman rocked the child against her chest, whispering words too soft to hear. Ruiz's face was pale, jaw trembling. She steadied her voice. "We hold this compound. No one moves alone." Garvey snarled. "We're sitting ducks here. We need to move out." "Move out where?" She cut in, sharp, louder than she meant. "The ridge is crawling, the valley locked down. This is all we've got." He glared but said nothing. The truth weighed heavier than his pride. The squad leader barked orders, snapping the men into positions along the walls. Rifles braced, eyes scanning, waiting for the next wave. She slid back toward the building where she had found the cages. Something gnawed at her, sharp and unrelenting. Why would the enemy keep civilians here? Why guard them, then abandon them? Unless the civilians weren't the prize. The woman's cough echoed behind her. Wet, weak. The boy's eyes burned into hers, accusing, defiant. She knelt, lowering her rifle. "Who did this to you?" she asked softly. The boy didn't answer. His jaw clenched, lips tight. The woman whispered something in her language, voice trembling. The boy shook his head sharply. "Secrets even now." Her stomach knotted. She reached for her canteen, offered it to the boy. He hesitated, then snatched it, handing it first to his mother. She drank in shallow gulps, eyes never leaving hers. There was more here. She could feel it pressing against her like the heat of the fire still curling from the wreck. Outside, another burst of gunfire cracked. The squad shouted, returning fire. Shadows danced on the ridge again. She rose, stepping back into the courtyard. Her rifle felt heavier now, not from weight but from knowing. Because this wasn't just survival anymore. This was a trap with layers she couldn't yet see. "Ammo check," the squad leader called. Voices answered, grim, low counts. No resupply, no bird, just them, the civilians, and whatever waited behind the silence of these walls. Night would come soon, and with it something worse. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. The heat pressed into her armor, sweat carved lines down her neck, her heart hammered but steady, always steady. And in that darkness behind her eyelids she saw him again, her brother, laughing once before war stole it from him, his voice telling her not to chase what he had chased, his casket, the flag folded sharp against her mother's chest. She had come here to carry what he couldn't, to stand where he had fallen. And now, with this squad, with these strangers who doubted her fire, she felt the same shadow creeping closer. A voice broke through her thoughts, Ruiz. Why do you stay so calm? His whisper cracked, raw, his rifle trembled in his grip. His eyes searched hers like a drowning man searching for air. She exhaled slow. I'm not calm, I just learned not to show it. Does that help? Her gaze shifted to the ridge, to the smoldering wreck, to the cages still open in the shadows. Sometimes it doesn't. He swallowed hard. His lips moved as if to ask another question, but no words came. A scream tore the air before he could. Not from the ridge, from inside the compound. The woman! Her voice rose, sharp, breaking. The boy shouted something, pulling at her arm. The little one wailed. She ran. The woman was on the ground, clutching her stomach, coughing blood. Ruiz knelt beside her, eyes wide, hands hovering helpless. The boy shouted again, frantic. His words too fast, too broken for her to understand. But the fear in his voice needed no translation. She knelt, pressing a hand against the woman's side. Wet, warm, not from the firefight, from something deeper, something slower. Poison. Her chest clenched, not random, not collateral, deliberate. This wasn't just a compound, it was a cage, and they had all just walked inside. The woman's eyes met hers, wide, shimmering with pain. Her lips formed words that barely carried breath. She leaned close, straining to hear. What she heard froze her blood. And in that instant she understood. The ambush was never about them. It was about what she had just uncovered. What do you do when the enemy hides not in shadows, but in truth itself? The woman's breath rattled against the dust. Her lips trembled, whispering fragments of words breaking between coughs. Blood smeared her scarf, soaking into the dirt. Her boy gripped her hand tight, shouting words sharp with desperation. The little one clung to her chest, crying in small, broken sobs. She pressed harder against the wound, but it wasn't working. The blood was too dark, too steady. Ruiz's voice cracked. She's hit bad, we have to get her out. She shook her head. It's not a bullet. His eyes darted to hers, confusion, fear. It's inside her, she said softly, not from the firefight. The boy's gaze locked on her then, fierce, burning. His small body trembled, but his eyes cut like steel. He said something again, louder this time, as if demanding she understand. Garvey stormed in, his voice sharp. What the hell going on here? We've got contact on the ridge, ammo running dry, and you're babysitting. Her head snapped toward him, voice low but edged with fire. She's poisoned. Garvey froze, his anger faltering. Poisoned. Deliberate. His mouth opened, closed, the weight of it settled. This wasn't random, this wasn't accident, this was design. The boy shouted again, yanking at her sleeve, pointing to the woman's scarf. She pulled it back. For a second her chest hollowed. A mark burned into her skin, not a wound, not a tattoo, a brand. Her breath caught. The woman's eyes found hers, wide, pleading, drowning in pain. She whispered again, weaker now. One word, over and over, a name, a place. Her chest ached. She leaned closer, straining. The sound was faint, but it lodged inside her like shrapnel. It wasn't a name, it was a warning. The squad leader's voice tore through the radio before she could speak. All positions, report. Enemy massing north side. We need every rifle. She tightened her jaw, pressed the boy's hand against his mother's wound. "Stay with her," she whispered. Then she rose. Outside, the firefight surged again. The ridge spat fire. Shadows swarmed closer, darting from rock to rock. Bullets clanged against stone, shattered through wood. The squad fired back, frantic, desperate. She pressed herself against the wall, rifle steady, eyes cutting through the haze. Her shots were precise. 2 shadows dropped. Another staggered. Her fire bought seconds, but seconds weren't enough. "Where's that bird?" Garvey roared. No answer, only static. The colonel's voice had gone silent. The radio hissed with emptiness. Her stomach knotted. This wasn't just a missed signal. This was blackout. They weren't meant to be heard. Ruiz scrambled beside her, firing wild, teeth clenched. Sweat streaked down his face. He looked younger now, almost a boy himself. His hands shook with every reload. "Breathe," she told him, sharp but calm. "I can't." "Yes, you can." He blinked at her. For a second the firefight blurred. He saw her, really saw her, and his breathing slowed, his hands steadied. His next shot landed true. The ridge fell quiet, not cleared, just paused. Every man shifted, shoulders rising, lowering, waiting for the next wave. She leaned back against the wall, heart pounding slow and heavy. The boy's eyes flashed in her mind. The brand on the woman's skin, the whispered word that tasted like a warning. This wasn't about weapons, wasn't about a compound. It was something deeper, something darker. And she couldn't tell them, not yet. Because how do you explain to men who already doubt you that war isn't just fought with bullets, but with silence, poison, and secrets? The medic called from the corner, "She's fatting." She closed her eyes for a second, drew in a slow breath, then forced herself back inside. The woman's chest rose shallow, weak. The boy sat rigid, jaw tight, refusing to cry. The little one whimpered, clutching his mother's scarf. She knelt again, leaned close. "What did they do to you?" The woman's lips trembled, her eyes glistened. She whispered one last time, a single word. This time she understood. It wasn't just a warning, it was a location. Her stomach turned cold. The woman's breath hitched, then stopped. Silence fell heavy, absolute. The boy's fists clenched. His chest rose and fell fast. His eyes burned with something beyond grief, something older, something sharper. Ruiz whispered, broken, "God." She swallowed hard. Her throat felt raw. She closed the woman's eyes with her gloved hand, quick, silent. The boy didn't look at her. He stared at the floor, lips pressed thin, jaw trembling. She wanted to say something, to tell him she was sorry, but words were useless here. War didn't honor them. War only remembered silence. The squad leader stepped in, voice flat. "We can't stay here. We'll be overrun by nightfall." Her eyes snapped up. "If we move, we walk into them. Then we make a break, split if we have to, better than dying here." She rose slowly. "This compound isn't what you think. It's not random. It's not just a hideout." He frowned, impatient. "What are you saying?" She glanced at Ruiz, at the boy, at the cages still standing like empty coffins. "I'm saying we're not here by accident." The words hung, heavy, dangerous. The squad leader shook his head. "You're rattled, stick to the mission." Her jaw tightened. She almost spat the truth, the brand, the poison, the whispered word etched into her bones. But she stopped. Not yet. Because she knew what doubt looked like in their eyes. She had seen it her whole life. And if she told them now, they'd dismiss it as nerves, as weakness, as anything but truth. So she swallowed it, locked it down. The boy's eyes lifted then, straight into hers, fierce, accusing. He knew she had understood his mother's word. He knew she was holding it. And in that gaze, she felt the weight of choice pressing against her chest. Stay silent and keep them alive a little longer. Speak, and risk losing them before the truth mattered. Outside, gunfire cracked again, dragging them all back. The ridge wasn't done. The The silence wasn't done. And neither was she. Because the woman's last words still echoed in her mind, louder than any bullet. And it changed everything. What happens when silence becomes heavier than gunfire? The sun had bled into the horizon hours ago. Now only the cold remained. The compound walls, once blistered by heat, radiated a damp chill. The desert was never kind, but at night it turned merciless. Every shadow stretched long, every sound cut sharp. The squad huddled low. Their breaths came in clouds. The radios were dead, only static whispering faint in their ears. No word from command, no signal from the colonel. They were alone. She sat against the crumbling wall, rifle propped, her eyes fixed on the dark ridge. She could feel them out there, watching, waiting, patient as wolves. Ruiz sat beside her, rocking slightly, humming under his breath. It wasn't a tune she knew, maybe something from home, maybe nothing at all. His fingers twitched, restless against his rifle. She wanted to tell him to stop, to still himself, but she didn't, because she understood. Sometimes silence was worse than sound. Garvey paced like a caged animal. His boots scraped against the dust. His voice was sharp, cutting through the night. "We can't just sit here. They'll close in. They always do." The squad leader didn't look up. He crouched over the map, flashlight low, his finger tracing routes that didn't exist. "If we move now, we break in the open. We wait for dark to thicken. Then we slip." "It's already dark," Garvey spat. "Not dark enough." The air tensed. Words hung sharp, brittle as glass. She stayed silent, watching, listening. But inside her chest, the woman's whisper gnawed at her. That final word, a place, a warning, the truth no one else knew. The boy had looked at her as though she carried it like a weapon, and maybe she did, but weapons could turn on their owners. If she spoke, would they hear her? Would they believe? Or would her voice only deepen their doubt? The boy sat curled near his brother, his small shoulders stiff, his jaw set. He hadn't cried, not once, not when his mother stilled, not when they pulled her body aside. His silence was heavier than all their words. And she felt it, felt his eyes on her even when he didn't look. Her breath misted in the cold. She clenched her jaw. What if silence was a sin? The crack came sudden, a shot splitting the night. The squad dropped low, rifles raised. Shadows shifted on the ridge. A flare streaked overhead, exploding white. For a heartbeat, the desert turned to day. Figures crouched along the rocks, dozens, maybe more. Then darkness swallowed them again. "They're close," Ruiz whispered, his voice shaking. The squad leader's voice cut steady. "Hold fire, let them come." But Garvey was already aiming, his teeth bared, his finger twitched on the trigger. She reached out, her hand snapping to his barrel. "Not yet." He whipped his head toward her, fury blazing. "Don't." "Not yet," she hissed, her voice cut sharp, low, unshaken. For a second his anger faltered, her grip stayed firm. And then in the silence between breaths they all heard it, footsteps. Not enemy, too light, too hesitant. From the shadows a figure emerged, small, thin, a boy. Not their boy, another, his clothes ragged, his arms trembling. He stumbled forward, hands raised. Every rifle tracked him. "What the hell?" Ruiz breathed. Garvey snarled, "It's a trick, they're using him." The boy's voice cracked through the night. Words none of them understood, but the tone was clear, pleading. Her chest tightened. Another child, another piece of the puzzle none of them wanted. The squad leader cursed under his breath. "We can't." But before he could finish, another sound tore the night. Not gunfire, not footsteps. A low rumble, distant, mechanical. "Engines." Her stomach knotted, not rescue, too heavy, too close. She pressed her ear against the dirt, listening. The ground trembled faint. "Vehicles." The squad leader's face hardened. "They're moving in." Garvey spat. Told you we couldn't sit." Panic edged their voices. The map, the ridge, the boy still standing, shaking, caught between rifles and war. She rose slowly, her rifle steady but low, her voice cut calm, even. "We move now, we scatter, we stay, we're crushed." The squad leader glared. "Then what?" Her breath caught. The word burned on her tongue, that final whisper, that cursed truth. But again she swallowed it. Not yet. Because if she spoke, everything shifted, and she wasn't ready to carry the fallout. Instead, she locked eyes with the boy, their boy, the one who had lost everything. His stare burned back, accusing, demanding. She lowered her rifle. "We wait." The squad leader hesitated. Garvey cursed. Ruiz closed his eyes, whispering that broken tune. And in the night, the engines drew closer. They came in slow, cautious, 2 trucks, lights dimmed, armed silhouettes in the back. The squad crouched lower, hearts pounding, fingers tightened on triggers. The child still stood in the open, a silhouette against headlights. The truck slowed, stopped. Silence pressed heavy. Then one of the silhouettes called out, a language none of them knew, a tone sharp, commanding. The boy answered, voice cracking high with fear. The men in the trucks laughed. Her stomach turned cold. She lifted her rifle, but the squad leader's hand shot out. Not yet. Her breath caught. The men leapt from the trucks. Their rifles glistened in the faint moonlight. They moved toward the boy. And that was when the shot rang out. Not from the ridge, not from the trucks. From behind her. Garvey. The first man dropped. Then the night exploded. Gunfire, screams, engines roaring, the ridge lit with muzzle flashes. Chaos ripped through the desert. She fired clean, precise. Shadows fell, trucks flared with sparks. The boy scrambled back, diving into the dust. But for every man that dropped, more poured from the dark. The squad was drowning. Her chest burned, her throat dry. Her hands moved on instinct, cold and sharp, but her mind was somewhere else, on the words she hadn't spoken, on the truth gnawing inside her. This wasn't just ambush, this wasn't chance. They had been led here. And the silence was deliberate. When the last truck burned, when the last shadow melted into the dark, the squad sat slumped in the dirt, breathing ragged, eyes hollow. They had survived, barely. But survival wasn't victory, it was death. Bodies littered the sand, smoke curled into the cold sky. The child was gone, vanished into the night. And the boy who remained, their boy, still hadn't spoken. His silence cut sharper than the bullets. Ruiz sat shaking, his lips moving in prayer. Garvey spat blood, muttering curses. The squad leader stared blank into the dark. She sat still, rifle across her knees, heart pounding like a drum. And inside her chest the woman's whisper echoed, that final word, that secret. She knew now, this wasn't just war, it was theater, a stage dressed in blood and silence. And she was part of it. The question was, how long could she hold her silence before it consumed them all? What breaks a soldier first, the bullet or the silence that follows it? The desert was quiet again, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses into your ears until you hear only your own blood moving, heavy and slow. Smoke drifted from the trucks, curling into the night sky like the ghosts of men who wouldn't be buried. The stench of fuel and iron mixed with the cold air, and even breathing felt like swallowing ash. They were alive, barely. The squad lay scattered in the dust, each man slumped, hollow. Ruiz sat against the wall, his hands trembling, eyes fixed on the dirt as if reading some secret there. Garvey cursed under his breath, spitting blood, his knuckles white around his rifle even though the firing had stopped. The squad leader stood rigid, staring out at the ridge, jaw clenched so hard it looked carved from stone. She sat apart, knees bent, rifle across her lap. Her body ached, her muscles burned, but it was the silence inside that weighed heavier. That word still gnawed at her. The woman's last breath, the brand on her skin, the boy's accusing eyes. She hadn't spoken, not yet. The boy sat near his brother, clutching him close, small shoulders rigid, his face unreadable. He hadn't shed a tear, not one, but his stare, it cut sharper than bullets, as if he knew she carried something she refused to lay down. Her chest tightened. She thought of her own mother years ago when the letter had come. The folded flag. The words no one ever really remembered because they were just noise. She had been the one standing silent, fists clenched, too young to grieve, too proud to break. And now she was staring at herself, in him. The squad leader broke the stillness. We move before dawn. If they regroup, we won't hold another wave. Garvey barked a bitter laugh. Move where? Radio's dead. Evac's gone. You want us to march into the black and hope. The leader snapped back. You want to sit here until they skin us alive. Voices sharpened. Ruiz flinched at the sound, whispering faster to himself. She lifted her head. Her voice came low, steady. There's a place. The words hung. The leader turned. What did you say? She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to hold it, to bury it deeper. But the boy's eyes burned through her silence. She drew in a slow breath. The woman, before she died, she gave me a word, not random, a location north of here. The leader frowned. And you're just telling us now. Garvey's voice exploded. Unbelievable, she's been holding back. Shut up, she cut in, her voice sharp as steel. She looked straight at Garvey, unflinching. If I said it earlier, you wouldn't have listened. You never do. The air froze. Garvey, jaw worked, fury burning, but he said nothing. The leader studied her, long silent. Why trust it? Because she burned for it, she said softly. Her voice wavered just once. Because she branded it into her skin. The men shifted, uneasy. Ruiz's lips stilled. Garvey looked away. The leader's eyes narrowed, weighing her words, testing their weight. Finally, he nodded once. We move north. Garvey cursed again, low, bitter, but he didn't fight it. She exhaled slow, her chest aching. The truth was out, not all of it, but enough. The boy's eyes locked on hers, fierce. For the first time he nodded, just once. It felt like a blade twisting in her ribs. They moved at first light. The desert stretched endless, pale gold under a sun that promised nothing but heat. Boots crunched against stone. Gear rattled faint. Every step echoed with exhaustion. No radio, no backup, just a direction carved from a dying woman's breath. They marched in silence, each man wrapped in his own ghosts. Ruiz hummed under his breath again, softer now, as if afraid the desert might swallow even that. Garvey muttered curses with every step, his voice cracking like a man trying to hold anger because it was easier than fear. The leader walked ahead, rigid, eyes scanning the horizon. She walked near the boy. His small hand clutched his brother's tighter than rope. His steps were steady, stubborn. Not once did he stumble. She wanted to speak to him, to tell him she understood, that she carried his silence with her, but the words stayed locked behind her teeth. Because what good were words in a war that devoured them? The sun rose higher, heat pressed against their backs, throats dried, canteens emptied too fast. And then movement. Ruiz spotted it first, a glint distant on the horizon. Scopes lifted, rifles readied. Not enemy. A tower. Faded, broken, a structure barely standing. North, she whispered. The leader nodded. That's it. They pushed harder, steps quickened. Hope edged their pace, sharp but fragile. But as they neared, the air shifted. The tower wasn't alone. Figures moved around it, armed, watching, waiting. Garvey spat. Trap, I told you. Her chest tightened, she forced her voice steady. It's not a trap, it's a door. The leader's eyes flicked to her, searching, doubting, but not dismissing. And for the first time she felt it, not doubt, not dismissal. Trust, thin, fragile but real. It almost broke her. Night fell again before they reached the tower. They dug shallow, spread thin. Every man kept watch in turns. She sat awake long after her shift ended. The boy sat near, his eyes glowing faint in the starlight. He spoke for the first time. A single word. She didn't understand it, but she understood him. It wasn't accusation now, it was something else. Expectation. And it pressed heavier than all the silence before it. The tower loomed closer by morning. Broken stone, rusted steel, shadows inside that seemed to breathe. Ruiz whispered, trembling, "What if it's nothing?" She answered without pause, "Then we keep walking." Garvey scoffed, but there was no fire left in it. They approached slow, careful. The desert held its breath. And then from within the ruins, a sound. Not enemy, not child. A voice. English. Her heart stopped. The leader froze. Garvey raised his rifle. Ruiz whispered a prayer. The boy squeezed her sleeve, tight. And she realized this wasn't the end of silence. It was the beginning of something worse. Because sometimes the only thing more dangerous than not knowing is knowing. What happens when the truth you've been chasing finally speaks back? The voice drifted out of the tower, low and broken, carried by the wind. English, clear, impossible. The squad froze, breathless. Her heart pounded so hard it drowned the silence. She gripped her rifle tighter, the metal biting against her palm. The boy clutched her sleeve, his eyes wide, not with fear but recognition. The leader whispered, "Identify." The voice called again, stronger this time, "Help here." Ruiz blinked fast, his lips moving in frantic prayer. Garvey muttered a curse, his knuckles white on his trigger. She swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed trap. But something deeper, something raw in her bones, told her this was no enemy. She moved first, slow, careful. The others followed, rifles raised, boots crunching against the brittle sand. The tower loomed taller with every step, its shadow stretching long and crooked. The closer they came, the clearer the voice became. "Help me, please, don't leave me here." It was desperate, human, too broken to be bait. They reached the doorway. Broken stone, rusted iron. Inside, the air smelled of mold and something sharper, chemicals. The leader nodded once. They swept in. Rifles up, eyes sharp. The light was dim, dust hung thick. And then they saw him. A man shackled to the wall, his uniform torn, stained, his face hollow, eyes sunken but burning with something alive. "American." Her throat went dry. Ruiz gasped. Garvey spat a curse under his breath. The leader froze, every muscle taut. The man lifted his head, his cracked lips pulling into something between a smile and a grimace. "Took you long enough." Her chest caved. This wasn't a trap. This was a secret buried in stone, hidden from them all. She lowered her rifle, stepping closer. "Who are you?" The man's eyes found hers, sharp, knowing. "No one, according to the record books, I don't exist." Her stomach twisted. She knew those words too well. He coughed, his body racked, then spat blood into the dirt. "They buried us, years ago, ghosts they didn't want walking, thought no one would ever find this place." Her skin chilled. The brand on the woman's skin, the poison, the silence in their radios, it wasn't random. This was the center. The leader's voice broke harsh. "How many?" The man's eyes flicked up hollow. "Too many. Most are gone, some still breathing. Barely. You're standing on the grave of a unit your command erased." Silence swallowed the tower. Garvey shook his head. "No, bullshit, we'd know, we'd have been told." The man laughed, bitter and broken. "That's the point. You were never supposed to know. That's why they sent you here." Her breath caught. The boy's stare burned into her side. The pieces locked, sharp and jagged. They hadn't been sent to capture anything. They'd been sent to disappear. The leader's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to her, then back to the prisoner. "Why keep you alive?" The man's voice cracked low. "Because silence isn't enough. You erase a name, it's gone, but you erase a witness, His eyes gleamed. That makes the silence louder. Her chest ached. She wanted to scream, to tear at the stone around her, to demand why they were used, why the boy's mother had to die, why her own silence had fed into this machine. But her voice stayed locked, because deep inside she already knew the answer. War didn't just take lives, it sculpted lies. They broke the man's chains. His body crumpled, weak. Ruiz caught him, trembling as he steadied him. The leader paced, his mind racing behind his eyes. Garvey muttered curses, louder now, cracking under the weight of betrayal. She crouched near the man, her voice low. The woman, she died for this. She branded the name, she gave us the way. The man's eyes softened just for a moment. She wasn't the first, won't be the last. Her throat tightened. The boy leaned against her, silent, unblinking, his gaze locked on the broken soldier. And in that gaze, she saw what came next. This wasn't about survival anymore, not about escape. It was about witness. They moved before dawn, the man too weak to walk alone, supported by Ruiz and the leader. The boy and his brother trudged steady, unbroken. Garvey trailed, muttering, spitting into the sand. She walked point, every step heavy, every breath tight. The desert stretched endless, but something had shifted. They weren't marching toward safety. They were marching against silence. And that was more dangerous than any enemy. By midday, the sun blistered overhead. Their shadows stretched long, thin against the sand. The radio still hissed nothing. The leader called a halt. They crouched low, conserving what little strength remained. Garvey snapped finally, his voice raw. We're dead. You know that, right? None of this matters. They'll bury us the second we're home. The leader didn't answer. Ruiz whispered prayers. The rescued man stared hollow into the dirt. She turned to Garvey, her voice quiet but sharp. Then maybe it's not about us making it home. His laugh cracked bitter. Then what the hell is it about? Her eyes flicked to the boy, to his silence, to his stare that burned through everything. It's about someone still standing, she whispered, even if no one listens. Garvey spat in the sand, shaking his head, but he didn't argue. The boy's eyes softened, just slightly. And for her, that was enough. Night fell one last time, cold still. They dug shallow again, huddled close. No words now, only breaths, only silence. She sat awake, rifle across her knees, eyes on the stars. The boy sat beside her, his small hand brushing hers. And for the first time, she didn't feel accused. She felt trusted. She closed her eyes. And in that silence, she understood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Dawn broke. The desert stretched endless, waiting. They rose, shouldered their weapons, carried their ghosts, and walked forward. Silent, unshaken.